Brian, you're muted again.
Fuck.
It's working now.
Can you hear me now or no?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right, cool. So what's going on, everyone? Saturday night. Just chilling out. Gonna have some real good conversation. Episode 12 with the man Jaime Aguilar from Sentinel Combatives out of Del Rio, Texas. And we're gonna be talking about what are we talking about? What are we I'll let you talk about what we're talking about.
What we're talking about is what we're talking about today is, some conversations about self-defense and the border. So if we'll just throw it out there, and we'll let Jamie actually explain that topic to us, if that's good with you.
Yeah, we both got a lot to say about that. So as you guys all know, like here, like we just kind of just say shit how it is, and like if you listen, you listen. If you don't, you don't. So me and Mr. Aguilar both live in border towns. Him living in Del Rio, Texas. Very right there. Mexico's like pretty much on his back doorstep, and I live here in Las Cruces, New Mexico, right next to Juarez, Mexico. It's about 30 minutes away. So we're going to be talking about just kind of how this man is helping his community out with the recent stuff that's been going on in his little town, and just how it all coordinates the self-defense, what he sees out there right now with the situation going on the border with a lot of the migrants coming in and drug cartels and stuff going on there. So let's get it started. Let's get him up. Let's do this.
Here we are.
There he is. Good evening. How you doing?
Good. How are you, gentlemen?
We're doing pretty good. So yeah, we're about to set this shit off, man. We're about to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. What's going on around here? So
Let's see what kind of trouble we can get into.
We can't mention certain presidents, so we'll be censored. So we have to just kind of abbreviate that. But I want people who are watching just give you a brief synopsis of your background. I know what you're doing out there right now for your community. I see you doing a lot of seminars and offering stuff to kind of just help people get prepared for what's been going on, the crazy shit that's been going on over there. I got some coworkers. Most of all the coworkers that work in our propulsion shop, which is the guys that work on the jet engines, they all used to work at Columbus. So that's a base there, right? Columbus, right? Or what is it? What's the base there?
Here in Del Rio?
Yeah.
Oh, Laughlin.
Laughlin, yeah. I might say Laughlin, yeah.
Yeah.
All those dudes worked at Laughlin, so they go back and forth to Del Rio like pretty much every other week to go see their families because they work here at Holloman. And they're telling me, I picked their brains yesterday about what's going on over there. They're like, man, it's kind of crazy.
Well,
so we're gonna have you elaborate on that, but just give some people a quick background, just real brief about your background in the arts.
Well, I started martial arts back in around 90-91 timeframe. I studied under a gentleman here in town. His name was Ken Lucio, and he was a Chinese Kenpo instructor. So I studied with him for about 9 or 10 years because on and off, because I was going to college, right? And I got my black belt in Chinese Kenpo. I've done some combative grappling, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and we moved to San Antonio. We lived there for about 9 years, and that's where I met Mr. Mike Blackgrave. And he was the one that I opened my eyes into really what combatives is, especially dealing with blade, stick kind of work. I learned with him on and off the same for a few years. And then, of course, I met Mr. Lloyd De Jongh in Piper, and I got my level 3 from him. And so when I started SentCom-Texas, it's kind of a blend of that what I've studied, which people do now is, they cross-train in many different things and then teach, their own flavor. I did the same thing.
Kind of blend everything in, yeah. Yeah, Mr. Is awesome.
I saw, I know your background, Brian. Kurt was explaining to me some of his background. I've seen the kind of the people you have on this show, and I'm wondering what I'm doing here.
You keep saying that, but we know you know what you're talking about. That's why you know me. Even in private, I've messaged you and got your advice and asked you to show me some stuff. You know what I mean, as far as like tactics and stuff like that. And you've just a couple of brief times you showed me. I've learned a great deal of stuff from you as far as like different techniques and tactics and just stuff like that. So you definitely belong on the show. Like I said, there's no egos here, and you have a lot of great material, and that's what kind of lets me, kind of go into our next thing. You have anything, Kurt?
Not currently. I'm actually really curious about some of the how your Chinese Kenpo actually overlaps with FMA and some and Piper a little bit down the line, but we all come from. It's interesting about like the myriad background of martial arts that everybody comes from, and how it leads to like where they are today, as to like what they're doing today. So, given like martial arts here in the U.S. starting like back in the 80s and the 90s, when everything was very much taekwondo, karate, and kung fu, and now they're like people in the industry, so to speak, especially with law enforcement and military, they move toward FMA and the knife prison systems. It's an interesting evolution. So
even the UFC, the first UFCs, the weight limits, style against style. I think that the UFCs opened a lot of eyes, when they first came on, and like right now, there seems to be a lot of orientation towards the blade arts, especially the ambush type.
So, like I said, but I want to lead me into going into. I've been watching a lot of your videos, and I know you've actually invited me a couple of the seminars over there and stuff to train over there, which I will. While I'm still here in New Mexico, I definitely plan on making a trip to Del Rio and meeting you and training with you over there. Why do you think with your seminars, like what prompted you to kind of get active, like involved in the community? Like what need did you see? Because I see you do a lot of stuff for like women and men in your community. What prompted that? Like what have you been seeing? Let's kind of get into the little bit that's going on. What do you see that why people needed that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's prompted just from what you're seeing here at the border. You're seeing things that haven't been seen. The kind of people that are passing through here that, just in general safety. And I am a very strong believer that a blade is an equalizer, and so blade lends itself for self-defense for women. If you're proficient in a blade, it can overcome a lot of things, especially when a predator is bigger and stronger, right? A blade can be an equalizer. And so that's mainly it. I have 3 daughters. And so then that extrapolates to the general community, women here. And so that's one of the reasons, when I've had these seminars, it's kind of a mix. Here Del Rio, it's a small community, but there is some interest, and just general safety is what prompted me to get into this.
But as far as like, because I know the dudes I was talking to, like that work in the jet shop, they're telling me like the crime there, like about 10 years ago was, you had sporadic stuff that was shit that was going on at the border, dude ripped somebody off, or like, 8 ounce of weed, whatever, get shot, stabbed or whatever. And then you started having the coyotes come, and then, and fentanyl is becoming a big thing now with all border towns. And then now the crime with, people getting ripped off of fentanyl, getting killed over that, deals being made. So like just kind of take us, because we don't live there. I mean, Kurt's like the farthest from all of us, right? He's like, he's been up in Alaska. He doesn't know like what's going on there. But like as far as like what you seeing over there right now as far as crime, like what type of crime are you seeing?
Yeah, I was telling Kurt in the pre-interview that I'm not um, I can only give you the perspective from someone that's lived here most of their lives, right? I'm not by any means an expert, right? But I do see things because I live here that I know are not covered in the media, right? And so there's always been illegal immigration here, but not in any way, shape, or form to what we've been seeing in the last 2 years. Um, the right now it's kind of settled down in the sense that the government has created such a massive infrastructure with NGOs. You know what NGOs are, right? Non-governmental. Yeah. These massive holding facilities. Where they're very efficiently getting as soon as they cross, getting them out, shipping them into the interior. Um, there is a town of about 38,000, 40,000 people, right? And so what we were seeing about a year ago was that they would dump them off, and Stripes is a chain of gas stations, right? And so there's Stripes on the main strip here. They were just dumping them there. And so you'd have some, crowds of 10, 15, 20, 100 people just all huddled in this little gas station. And they start walking off into the main strip, and it became a major thing because you'd see people just walking up the street, crossing, right? But the government has done such a, and I'm not speaking in a good way, they've just done such a quick, how they process them and ship them out. And,
there's no vetting.
You just don't see it anymore, but the amount of illegal immigration that comes through here is just massive, and so you'll see sometimes people walking up and down the street, and there is a lot of concern. You don't know what some of these people are capable of. Of course, if they're out in the street, they can get desperate, or they're hungry, and desperate people do desperate things, and so
you saw what happened with downtown El Paso, and remember that shit was all over the news, where they're just like in downtown El Paso, you cannot go in there without either getting carjacked, mugged, or robbed, because right now there's a lot of them there, and they're desperate. Like, they got no jobs. They dumped them off. They're dumping them off at the hotels, at the bus stations, and it's the majority of crimes. I have a lot of friends in law enforcement area that we see are blaze type of attacks. Now, these are like, because they don't have guns, obviously, they can't get guns, but makeshift shivs, razors, pocket knives, whatever they can get their hands on as far as blunt force weapons to try to carjack or rob you in underground parking, or the classic ask for money, I need help, kind of thing. So a lot of people are getting stabbed. We've had a lot of my friend was saying there's a lot of incidents where people getting slashed, cars getting damaged. There's a lot of people there that are that they use the knives to cut off the purses of the women, to cut off the straps, take them off. So there is a lot of blade-oriented attacks and robberies that are being seen here in El Paso, and especially in the downtown area. But I don't, like I said, I don't know maybe where you're at, if those type of attacks are being seen as well.
No, we don't see too much of it. But the thing is, though, Brian, if you don't live there, everything you just told me is not covered in the media. And so the perspective from where we live is something that most people don't know about. And you still got people believing that the border crisis is a farce, that it doesn't exist. But you and me and several thousand people see it every single day. And so it does exist. But what's one thing or another, and but I can tell you from where I live, it does exist, and people are. I'm not even talking about the perspective of ranchers. Ranchers are seeing completely something different. Cartels crossing through their land, and there's a goddamn thing that the government is doing about it. Creating an outrage, and because people are outraged, speaking up, what is the first thing they label you? Oh, some sort of crazy right-wing conspiracy theory. So, but yeah, it's crazy,
The cartel violence. I know there's a big war going on right now in Juarez, because I was invited to go there about 2 weeks ago. We had to decline. I've only been to Juarez like twice since I've lived here the last 10 years. But lately, where they're having a big war right now with the fentanyl, CRA, it was a new generation. They're fighting with one of the local groups here, and it's not advised to go over there. But I think I was telling you or Kurt, and I was driving over the 10 by UTEP. We had just gone to dinner, and you could see the tracers and hear the gunshots right over the freeway. And you're right, people won't fucking wake up. They're like, no, man, like, that's over there. I'm like, dude, that's like less than 200 feet, like over the freeway.
Well, let me ask you one thing. For these open borders types, do you know one single one that is willing to take in an unvetted illegal alien? I personally don't. But to them, I mean, the crisis either doesn't exist or you just turn a blind eye to it.
It's insane. And what you said with the cartel violence, they're starting to. Okay, every day I go to work. Go back here. Every day I go to work, I have to drive through a border patrol check station. Before I can even get to Alamogordo, I have to drive from Las Cruces to White Sands Missile Range. This is on the 70. I have to stop at the border patrol station every morning. My car is searched with dogs. I'm searched, even though they know me every day. I go through, the guy's like, hey, I hate to do this to you, but I had to search your car, which is fine. They're doing the job. I don't mind it. But there's a reason for that, because not only just 2 days ago, they got over $1 million worth of fentanyl. There's 3 girls that were transporting it, and a lot of them had shoved up inside of them. They had over $100,000 of fentanyl inside their bodies. So I could see why that's being done. But they have these surveillance things there. I'd never seen them before. They're kind of like unmarked trucks, and they have like radar thing. Like, I don't know if they're FLIR or something, but they come right through White Sands National Park. Like, they'll come through on the highway, dump the drugs, they pick them off, and then they take off back into the desert, and their car takes the drugs into the town and sells them. So every time when I go on the freeway in the morning, usually I see a bunch of them rounded up on the side. And these aren't families, like people are saying, well, there's wives, there's kids, and all these people I've seen are mostly dudes or older women,
I think, you do see a lot of people that I want to believe are coming here because of whatever they're facing and, wherever they're from and trying to make a better life. The issue, though, with this illegal immigration is that it has not become weaponized. We're seeing numbers that we've never seen before, and the administration says that the border is closed. How? You were mentioning something about downtown El Paso. I was keeping an eye on that, but you notice when the VP made a trip down there, how it magically got cleaned up overnight?
Yeah, it was gone. I can tell you, I go down there because my son plays in a band and usually plays at this bar called B17s. It's like a bar that kind of in downtown, and you park your car there. I think Court Bolton asked the question, what's the exact specifics of the attacks? Basically, from what I've been hearing from law enforcement and some people down there, it's basically they use a lot of kids. There are a lot of kids downtown, which is sad. My heart goes out to the kids, but a lot of kids are used as decoys. Like, they'll go up to you, the kids will ask for money. Well, while they're doing that, here comes a guy behind them, which is a father, brother, somebody with a knife or something, or a pipe or whatever, and then tries to, give me your money, or whatever, or tries to take your vehicle. Basically, if you leave your vehicle running, it's gone over there. Okay, you leave your car open with the door open, keys in, or whatever, or they're gonna take your car. It's already happened 6 or 7 times in the last 2 weeks over here. So that's what I've been hearing. A lot of kids are being used as decoys. Women, the women are, I'm pregnant. It's hot out here because it's been in the 90s. It's starting to cool down around here. I need water. Basically distractions. While you open your wallet up, here's $1, and I'm guilty. I've done this shit before. I probably shouldn't have, but like sometimes, I know people think like I don't have a heart, but like sometimes I'll give it $1 to some homeless guy. Here's $1 to buy from me, But I stopped doing that in the last year or 2 years or so because of the shit like that happens. So basically, I hope to answer most of your question. There's some other stuff they told me, but I'll get to it later as far as what they're doing. Yeah, it's just that the camps you're talking about, we got the same thing here. I also got friends in Border Patrol. I trained with a guy who's a Border Patrol agent, and he's telling me a lot of them too. Like you said, when they round them up when they cut across the bridge or the river, Rio Grande, they like to use the You probably know what the name is. What's the knife these for paring? These use to cut grapes. I live in California. The ones that are curved.
Oh, I don't recall what they're called. Right now.
You have to use a lot of those. They carry them in the back pocket because they're small.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I got them. I'm cutting an apple, whatever. You know what I mean? So they use a lot of attacks on those. They'll attack the agents. A couple of my friends who are agents have been stabbed and slashed the last couple of months. My friend Leon Baker, he just retired, 40 years, Border Patrol agent. He's been stabbed 4 or 5 times. He's like, finally, he's like, fuck it, I've had enough. I'm retiring. I've been here 47 years. Like,
yeah,
I've lived my life. I've enjoyed, he's traveling around Europe and enjoying his life. And,
I hear that they're also just getting more brazen. Using their fists, kicking, punching. They're getting more brazen because honestly, they get over here and they don't fear. They don't fear any.
They don't fear. They're quick for the save. There goes the import save steel grape knife. Yeah, I think that's a little more fancy than what they got, but yeah, that's kind of like the same thing. Yeah. So, what do you guys say, Kurt? What do you guys say about this? You're sitting here, you're listening. What's your input?
So what's interesting, so talking about like all this coming up and the trickle down effect. So fentanyl actually has made it to Alaska in a big way. So it's not just there on the border. There is, like, as crime is disseminated from the border, it makes it to the very far reaches. Fentanyl is actually a big issue that we have to deal with in the villages. It used to be the opioid crisis, but now it's the fentanyl crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Especially there's a lot of homeless here in Alaska that they've transitioned from opioids to fentanyl. And like my wife, she worked in medical and she worked at our hospital. And one of the things that they're constantly training on is having to deal with that. Now, what's also really interesting, even like 10 years ago when I was stationed at Fort Hood, when we would do stuff there at Fort Bliss, right there at El Paso, a lot of our safety briefs were don't go outside the base at certain points of the day. Even to the point where even 5 years ago when I have friends still stationed there, they basically have a straight up zero tolerance policy of you just don't go off post. And don't go off post at night. So
El Paso's pretty safe. I've been. It's just that recently, every time I open the fucking news now, it's like there's a shooting at a bar, there's a migrant that killed this. And a big thing was happening is they're running on the freeways. Like a lot of them got creamed by trucks the last months, trying to cross the highway and not making it in time. The whole family's getting wiped out by trucks.
Yep. We were talking to Kurt about that, how there's a lot of high-speed chases. We follow each other, Brian, on Facebook, and you know how I used to post almost daily of high-speed chases. I stopped doing that because there's several now per day, in January, I think it was, there was a high-speed chase right outside our home. I was at work, and a car flew by here about 80, 90 miles an hour. This is a small, just a general neighborhood, right? And they crashed about a block down the road, absconded, and I got a call from my daughters at work that they were scared. They saw it happening. They were getting something down, groceries from one of our cars. We had it parked out, on the sidewalk, and thank God they were getting the stuff down from the door facing our yard. If they would have been getting out the door facing the street, I hate to think what could have happened, right? But anyway, the car ended up crashing into another vehicle about a block down the way, and they absconded, and they called me at work because they were scared. The people were in the neighborhood, and so that just blew my top. This is the America.
I can imagine,
yeah, this is the America we live in, right? Where it shouldn't be this way. My personal opinion, you say this is raw and unfiltered. The people that empower, they never gave a shit about Hispanics. Why all of a sudden now? Well, now because I think it's weaponized. They have a future of making them, or their thinking in the future is that these people are going to become a voting bloc. And if they have to get a voting bloc by these means, God help us with whatever that they have in mind for us.
Yeah, that's their voting base. So the more you get in, the more not sound conspiracy theorist, but it's true.
Yeah, and because you have people on video just 5-10 years ago these same people right now that say that this is fine, that there's no, that not giving a shit about Hispanics, talking about against illegal immigration. And now all of a sudden they've had a change of heart. I don't think so. When you talk about one thing with our governor did, you remember a few months ago when he sent 50 to Martha's Vineyard. And Martha's Vineyard is millionaires and billionaires. They have their second, third, and fourth homes there. They don't even live there most of the time. For 50, they called in the National Guard. And
of course, in their neighborhoods,
they go out of there like that, right? Here, I don't have the statistic. We had 1,800 just in one day. Just in this sector. For 50, they called National Guard. And you would think that, a lot of these elitists that live on the island, their mansion can hold several thousand people. You don't think one of them could have just come up, if they're really true to their convictions, say, you know what, for those 50, I'll house them in my mansion there, which I'm not even living in right now. Not one single one of them volunteered, and so, but
it's that's never going to happen.
But what I'm saying is that's the mind of the elitists.
The mind, yes.
The bullshit that nothing's wrong, everything's normal. I mean, 2 + 2 is 4. But to them it's sometimes 5, maybe sometimes 3.5. Yeah, it's crazy.
So I know we kind of got. I'm going to wing it off topic because we are talking about this. But so when someone goes and takes, like, when you develop curriculum for your community, because I know that when I've seen a lot of your seminars you've advertised, it's been like mixture of men, women, younger women, older women. What do you think about, like, when you do curriculum, you say, you wake up and say, I'm going to do a seminar. I'm going to get people together in the community. What kind of stuff? I don't want to give too much away, because obviously, about what someone who needs experience in themselves in person. But what's your curriculum look like? What do you teach as far as, like, what's your goal of teaching? Is it edge weapon defense? Is it empty hand? Is it kind of just awareness of everything, or? It's
a little bit of everything you just mentioned, but my emphasis is on blade. I think a blade is we were talking about this earlier. Blade is a great equalizer, right? And I don't do firearms. I noticed you put the picture up there. I don't do firearms, so there's people here in town that do much better job of teaching that. Plus, also the liability aspect, right? But I think that an edge weapon is something good for anybody to learn, because especially for women, for teenagers, because proficiency in it can negate somebody that's bigger, stronger, more skilled, right? Plus it's easy to conceal it, and so when I teach somebody that, when I start off, it's just very basic movements. I see what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and honestly, we go from there. It's tailored to every person individually. I don't do public teaching. Everything that I do is by private instruction only, and so that allows me to see what people are more apt, right? And then I work on their strengths, and eventually their weaknesses are also covered up.
Would you ever think about doing like a public seminar, or that's something?
Well, no, I have. I've done, for women, but a lot of people are, I don't know what the word is, but because I've had people come here and they want to, they're interested in blade work, and then I show them some of the blade work, and when you show them about pokes to the eyes,
too much.
A lot of soccer moms, that soccer mom mentality. Oh no, I want to learn self-defense, so they go somewhere down the road and learn something, a sporting type of art. And I mean, more power to them, right? I mean, it's not.
You
can't learn self-defense from a sporting aspect, but that's kind of the mentality. They see that, oh no, I can't do that, and so you try to explain, like, wait a minute, but if you get attacked, they're not going to have any pity on you. They're not going to be coming at you with rules and regulations, but you do have some that really that are interested, and
me, like I said, all my students, except for the exception of 2, are women, and I had lost a lot down the line because of what you just exactly said right now. The brutality, the reality of being brutal and protecting your life is something that was a little bit too much that they, I can't do that, like, and you explain to them, it's like what I said, what you were saying, I explained to them what you said. And they're just kind of, they still don't like, they wind up going, like I said, to a dojo with karate or BJJ, something that's not weapons based. I think what it is the brutalness, the reality, they can't take it. The ones that have stayed with me have now, that's all worn off, right? That's all worn off with them. Now they're not afraid to pick up blades, and we do some knife sparring, and we do some like stuff on Bob, and they're all for it.
Now it's raw and unfiltered, right?
Oh yeah, like one of my big students, not big, she's a small woman. She does stuff for movies. In fact, they just asked me to do choreography for a movie that they're going to be doing here, shooting next month.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you. So she's only like 5'3", and she was very, very timid. Now that lady is, I call a young lady, she's 26. She's so very fast and so very coordinated with the blade. I'm getting scared of her now. Like, she's like, we do like knife sparring stuff, and she's like, I got you. Like again, and she's like, hey, old man, she's like, you're getting older, I'm getting older. I'm gonna be like 50 soon. And she's like, yeah, I'm getting like, it's awesome to see your student progress with the blade, like that good, where they're better than you. Because, I think Coach Kurt's the same way too. Like, we're not the kind of people who are like, well, you can never be better than me because I'm your teacher. There's a certain level of respect you got there, but you want to see. You never Full Metal Jacket when they're like going through the mud and shit, and it's like, our instructors are proud to see you've gone beyond their control. That's the same way mentality I have now. Like, I'm not saying I'm breeding like a group of killers, right? I'm not breeding Kill Bill assassins, but I'm glad to see now that they can beat me in a lot of stuff as far as like with stick sparring, not beat me like, like technique wise, but like as far as speed, maybe some coordination. But
that's the mark of a good instructor, though. Brian, I think that's you're doing excellent work. But the other thing too is when you're teaching somebody with a blade, there's more components to it. There's also the moral, ethical, and legal thing, right? And so that's the reason why I only do private instruction. And of those do come and want to learn. Honestly,
you're doing the right thing for sure. Yeah,
I have to know you for a while, or they have to be recommended by someone that I really trust. Because like I said, you're dealing with a blade. The person has to have the right head on their shoulders.
Yes.
Honestly, I turn down about 80% of the people that want to learn, because you can getting to know them and initially and interview them, you can see this is not somebody.
And that's why I said years. Like, my students have trained like years to get to that point. The first year when we started training, it was all stick work, maybe some dulo, like palm stick, whatever. And then a lot of empty hand stuff. But then the second year with blade was taught, because I had to see, like you said, their moral compass, to see where their head was at, to see if they were willing to go and learn all that stuff to possibly take a life in self-defense. You know what I mean? You got the right mindset. And there's a couple of them that dropped out. I mean, I'm not gonna say everybody made it through, and we have like an awesome team. You know what I mean? There's a couple of girls that couldn't handle it. They're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm sorry. Like, thought it was gonna be different. Okay, cool. Whatever, you do your own thing. And I think Coach Kurt, I mean, you taught women blade before too. How's that? What was your experience on that?
So the thing that I found with teaching women in general is, one, the majority of the time dealing with teaching women self-defense, personal protection, is I'm dealing with it after the fact, after an incident has occurred, and after a traumatic event. So the big part of that process is actually, one, making sure that they're mentally and emotionally there to actually deal with that level of violence, and also like making sure that their mental state is capable enough to understand the difference between fighting and hunting. Because to use a quote from Rory Miller in Meditations of Violence, I mean, that's two separate things. Because I mean, fighting can be encompassed as sport fighting, as often people want to do because they want to feel empowered, feel strong, feel capable. But like crossing that line into hunting
Mhm.
and warfare, that's a different
Yeah,
thing.
that's the military side of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like getting people, not just women, but just people in general, to accept that fact that when you're dealing with the blade and you're actually dealing with the blade, you're dealing with killing people. Because let's just not parse any words there. Every stab, every slash is not defensive, it's
Mhm.
offensive, because you're choosing to utilize an edged weapon to defend yourself, and even up to the point of lethality. So, and because there's such like a taboo, because of blade culture and like this idea of a blade cult and whatnot, but the fact is the knife is a weapon, and it's a weapon for war, and it's a weapon for killing. And like getting that psychology and getting people to accept that fact that there is really no rules here per se, because that's fighting. You're hunting, you're killing.
Well,
And yeah.
when you use a blade, for a self defense, or it's like a gun. You
Yeah.
don't pull out your gun to intimidate. Then
No.
somebody, that third party that comes in, that's not knowing the context of the situation, blows your head off. Well, it's
Yep.
the same thing with a blade. You don't show a blade to intimidate it.
Nope.
When you're gonna use it outside of the realm for utilitarian purposes, I mean, it's got to be to
Yep.
maim, to stop the threat, right?
Yep.
And but that also involves a certain mindset, right?
Yep.
You're not dealing with an opponent. You're
No, you're
dealing,
dealing with the enemy.
and that's a
Yeah.
completely different mindset, which a lot of soccer moms and people can't get in that aspect of, right?
Yep.
And not to say that you mentioned Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I think Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is excellent for self defense, but
Absolutely.
when you're introducing a weapon, a blade, now you're in a different sphere, right?
Yep.
And to get people to understand that when and how to use a blade, that's you can run into some tricky material there, and that's why I only do private instruction and highly vet who it is that I'm teaching.
Well, like the things that I've done with like agency work and just combatives in general is I operate underneath the principle of criminal creativity, because that leads into like play and gets you away from like doctrinal, social, cultural practices typical of like say the Filipino martial arts. Because if you allow a student to be criminally creative, they'll actually figure out like the human patterns that actually work. And they'll actually, I mean, this is the reason why lion cubs play to kill. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
because that's how they learn. And so when you're doing these lethal games, because again, it allows people to be creative and actually figure out and think like how a predator is going to act. It's a very eye-opening experience for them as a thought experiment, because they'll actually understand this is how it actually will work. You take away all the culture and all the rhetoric and actually see how a predator operates and think and act like one in a theoretical context.
Yeah.
It's a huge paradigm shift.
Well,
And
yeah, and when you talk about knife self defense, a lot of these pretty kind of techniques work, maybe empty handed, but
yeah,
when somebody's got a blade doing something like that, are you going to get your hand in there? I mean,
they're not going to do this. Yeah.
and so but with that, though, having said that, there's also another component, is the pre-incident science, where you didn't have to get into that position. And I also teach a lot of that, what to look for, the right or left hand, more than likely where their weapon is going to be, certain outside of the baseline type of stuff, right? I also teach a lot of that, and I think that's a component that a lot of these sport-oriented self-defense don't teach. They teach an engagement strategy, but when you're dealing with a predator, you don't want to get engaged. So I think it'd be more prudent to teach the pre-assault science aspect of it.
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, it's depending upon terminology, it can call the pre-violence or pre-fight indicators, depending upon what. But the thing that I utilize in that same framework as a principle is to teach pre-fight indicators is you have to be criminally creative and actually do those things to mimic them, to understand what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And from a martial arts standpoint, that already breaks the mold. It already breaks the principles of morality. When the fact is, if we're dealing combatives, personal protection, and self-defense, we're actually fighting against the enemy, not a combative partner, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's not an agreement. And like getting people to shift that in their mind is tricky. So.
Yeah, and you bring up a very good point. Part of when I did CMOC under Mr. Mike Blackraven and Piper under Lloyd De Jongh, I learned a lot about that. Especially Brian, the Piper is based off of a criminal bladed system in South Africa, right? And so not that you want to mimic or emulate or admire, but you also want to see what people on the other side are doing. Not to become them, but to learn to defend yourself from them. And in a lot of these sport oriented, when the goal is to get a trophy or a plaque or some sort of rank recognition, right? Sometimes you don't see that. I'm at the age where I don't give a shit anymore about belts, about trophies, about going to go compete here or there. I'm too old for that. And quite honestly, you reach a certain age where you can not get into the situation, right? But also talk your way out of a lot of trouble. And so that doesn't really concern me. What concerns me is someone that has been in prison 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They've learned to hide that animal inside of them with a smile and getting close to you. That's the one that I want to prepare for. And so I kind of, with that, of course, I mentioned before, there's a certain psychology. And so a lot of people that honestly that come here, they're not interested in that. And I don't do this for a living. I mean, it would be nice to some sort of financial recognition, but we all know, what we do. You're not going to get rich on it. And so so now it becomes a passion, right? You're not expecting a financial reward. It's here, maybe sometimes here and there it is, right? But for the most part, you're not going to develop this as a primary financial means, right? It's more of a passion, and so it's not for everyone, and I don't try to push it as such, right? If the people that want to come here want to learn this stuff, great. If you don't, it really doesn't affect me.
You brought up a good point with the even in my training. There's a lot of schoolwork. A lot of people don't do that nowadays, but there's a lot of actual classroom work, like you said, pre-fight indicators, what to look for, profiling, stuff like that. A lot of people get turned off by that.
Oops.
Yeah, well, I've lost some students like that. They're like, well, wait a minute, we're not going to pick up weapons yet. We're not going to, hit the fucking heavy bag. We're not going to pick up the mat, or I was like, dude, we're going to do like we're going to go over this like classroom stuff first, and then we'll get into that later. You know what I mean? But a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to get right into the mix, right into the ring, right into the hitting. And I know that bores a lot of people, but you have to understand all that stuff before you even get with the pads, mitts, putting the helmets on, grabbing the knife. You got to learn all this psychological classroom type work before you get to that.
Yeah, and Kurt, you mentioned something earlier. Especially when it comes with a blade, a lot of people associate it with the criminal element, and they want no part of it, right? Yeah. And so they're woefully unprepared to deal with a criminal, And so it's a very sometimes can become a hot topic, right? And so
it is, yes.
Yeah, that's why I really stay away from that. That's why I'm very careful. Once again, of who I train. There's some people that come here that are federal law enforcement, so I know those guys have been vetted, right? And I trust them. Plus, I've known them for a while, and so I have no problem teaching them.
Well, it's interesting, like working with agencies, working with our local law enforcement agency, and also just presenting at agencies is like trying to get them to like make that paradigm shift in their mind of like not looking at it from the moral high ground of their badge and their oath, but like to truly understand the mind of the criminal, not just from like the viewpoint of I'm law enforcement trying to understand a criminal, but like let's play in that element in a thought experiment so we can actually see those things that they try to do. Like let's play that opportunistic game. Because I mean, there's a lot of games that I have used in the past, like the Razor game, which the basic idea is you have a group of people and you have a couple of people with a razor or a marker, and their job is to go and cut people and just see if they can get away with it, because that's the kind of stuff that criminals do. I mean, and trying to understand that play outside the framework of like moral authority because of a badge and oath it's sometimes hard. Often it's hard for like a lot of agencies to like cross that line and say, okay, maybe this is to understand this is the reasons why they do it. Because not every cut is to kill. Sometimes it's a distraction, or it's just like it's a game of ego. So it's a really tricky space coming from a martial arts background for a lot of people, because there's morality attached to it. And
when it comes to law enforcement, there's also the legality of it. I mean, there's a lot of things that they can't do, that really, in a sense, limits them when they have to take down a criminal, and so my hat's off to them, man, because they're, especially the way the world is getting now, they're in a very, very tight and tough situation a lot of times,
Absolutely. And it's, as an instructor, is talking about like the earlier conversation about we want our students to be better. We don't want them to we don't want to hold them back because of our ego. The fact is, when we're working with agencies that are actually going to use this stuff, hell yeah, we want them to be better than we are. Because that means that they're actually going to use this stuff. So
and they get into situations where we don't,
No.
They're on the front line, and so you want to equip them with something that has a better chance of them surviving, right? I mean, everything is a game of chance. There's no, I chuckle sometimes when I hear advertisements from instructors that say foolproof, guaranteed,
battle tested.
Those are the ones to stay away from, because nothing is foolproof. About a year and a half ago, I had a young lady come in here, and I'm not going to get into too much of it, but part of it is the psychological transformation, where if you are going to use a blade, the type of aggression that you have to develop. And so we were going over, the psychological component, and so I said, okay, so I'm gonna throw you a punch, and you're gonna defend yourself from it. I even tell my students, it's a right hand punch, so you know what's coming, right? And so I start off right, and they generally at first have this type of reaction, a very passive, kind of submissive, and then we go to the psychological part of getting amped up for the incident, right? And the second time, she popped me, right? And I wasn't expecting it. She's, oh my God, I'm so sorry. No, that's exactly what you need to do. You need to get that rage and aggression out, because you're going to be dealing with people that will kill you for $20 you have in your pocket or worse, and so some people don't. Really
hey, at least you got a hit in the face. You got a kick in the nuts when I did that same kind of shit one time. Yeah, it was like a little kick. I was like, you can kick a little harder. I got a cup on and everything. Oh, and like I said, I wasn't even expecting it. I was like, bam! And I fucking fell down, man. I went to my knees. I'm like, holy shit, it took my wind out of me. It's like, well, you said to kick you is all I could, right? And I'm like, oh yeah,
yeah.
Good thing I don't want any more kids anymore. This is done. It's like I'm done.
Re-stomp the groin.
Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting is, like, again, the psychology of violence. And, like, we've been raised as a society of keep your hands to yourself. Keep your hands to yourself. Don't hit people. If you touch, consent culture is a key part about personal protection and self-defense, because the fact is, we shouldn't be touching people that we don't have the permission or the consent to do so. But there's also this other part about that. When you have to cross that line when dealing with violence. By meeting it with violence, you have to get past that point of like, no, I can't touch you. It's like, well, this is the circumstance. You were allowed to touch them, and to the point of immediate and excessive force to eliminate the problem. And like getting people to cross that line and actually intellectually understand that is really, really hard, because our institutional educational structure has been like, no, 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 keep your hands to yourself.
Yeah, and you know, when you just mentioned violence, just the name itself has a pejorative connotation to it, right? But violence is neither good nor evil; it's just a methodology, right? Or it can be both. And so somebody breaks into your house at 3 o'clock in the morning. What are you going to use? Violence, right? Now, what you use, you know, as a tool, as a method, well, that's individual, right? A gun, a knife, or a bat, whatever. But yeah, I think that you know what you mentioned is exactly correct. Is somebody breaks into your house at 3 o'clock in the morning? What kind of intentions do they have? I mean, it's not just to come and take your, you know, your TV. It's probably with the intention of raping, pillaging, maiming, killing, you know, and so a lot of people don't, like you said, don't want to cross over into that and have to deal with that. You know, it's just so much easier in an air conditioned, you know, nice padded floor type of environment where, you know, that subject doesn't cross, right? And not that you, like I said before, I don't want to put down, you know, other arts, but you can learn a lot of stuff from them, right? But what I see also is that they don't teach that component. You know, they teach you to fight an opponent rather than a predator. You know, and two completely different things.
Well, I reference Tim Larkin all the time on his TED Talk about when violence is the answer, it is the only answer. And like getting people to like understand that or just even accept that fact, it's like, well, let's think about it. And you just explained it. But I mean, I reference that TED Talk and YouTube video all the time. It was mandatory educational training for any of the seminars I used to teach. Because the fact is, he goes through this whole category about explaining, or this whole conversation explaining the difference between competition and combat. And like, again, getting people to understand the difference and accept that fact is, again, it's tricky. And this is where martial arts is a lot about physical education. Violence and personal protection is more intellectual education. That's the harder part. But the physical stuff, that's easy. The emotional, intellectual side is really hard.
Yeah, and you know, also, like, you know, who you learn under and what you learn. I was very fortunate that when I was living in San Antonio to learn under Mr. Mike Blacker, and Brian, you know him. I mean, he really opened my eyes to a lot of things. You know, he has a pretty interesting background. You know, and completely night and day difference to the man, the father that he is now, and I really admire and respect him. But he really opened my eyes to the fighting a predator versus fighting an opponent, and the stuff that I learned from him. I take it to heart. I'm really appreciative that I got to learn under him. You know?
There's only a handful that I consider of people out there that are really, like Mike Blackgrave is one of these mentioned right now. There's really putting the reality in the training, like cutting the bullshit, the art part of it, and actually putting the reality street part of it into their training. And there's only like a handful of people, and I don't want to name everyone because I'm here all day, but I've seen that are doing that, and he's one of them. Like his videos he has of his grappling and stuff like that, you know, and just the experience that they got a drone on there. Huh? What was it? You gonna play?
Oh, continue. I'm just showing video work. So.
Okay. I saw it was a global hawk there on the background. There's only a handful of people that are really putting the street aspects into their videos and their actual teaching curriculum. And for those people, my hat's off to you. I applaud them. And those are the people lately. I know people are saying, you know, oh, we know this and that, but those are the ones I've really been seeking out for training lately. I've done all the art shit, and I've done all whatever, you know, the systems, whatever. But for me, I'm like you, Jaime. Like I could want to like concentrate in reality, like what's going on right now in this world, especially living here in this area. Where I see on the street here, the fucking crackheads, the fentanyl heads, the cartel shit. And a lot of people are like, well, you know, there's not like cartels are running to the town, you know, and going to Walmart and everything. Bullshit. I see those fucking guys every day going to Walmart. And they let you know that they're part of that shit too. They're not afraid of you.
Well,
You know?
I know we're jumping from topic here, but with the tens, hundreds, and billions of dollars that are to be made with human smuggling, with fentanyl, I hesitate to say this, but you just got to be careful. You know keep your eyes open. Even though we're here in the United States, a lot of shit happens. You know, unless you live here, you
touch you.
Don't see the kind of stuff that happens here. And I'll tell you something that's cryptic, but you'll get the message. I used to train with someone. This was several years ago. That was in federal law enforcement, and he mentioned something cryptic. He said, Jaime, if they can buy the presidency of Mexico, they can buy anything over here. And so he kind of left it at that. And so, yeah, so even though you're here in the States, here in a border town, it's not, well, it only happens in Mexico. No, there's a lot of stuff and people that are involved on this side. You know?
Yeah. And I see it every day around here. They're fucking constantly busting. Remember the Banditos motorcycle group? Hear about those dudes, the Banditos? So yeah, they're busted. The head guy lives in El Paso. Biggest bust raided his house. The FBI did. They're trafficking guns to the cartels over there. So around here, the big thing around here is.
So let me ask you something. So yeah, they busted him, but there's a whole web of people that are from the criminal element to the principal down the street, you know.
So the big thing
is you don't see these things happening, but
the big thing here is firearm theft. So around here, from what I hear, a lot of houses get broken into to steal guns. Well, everybody's like, well, you know, it's your local fucking crackhead. You know, he needs his next fix, so he's gonna steal someone's AR-15. He's gonna steal shotgun, you know, pawn it for a fucking 8-ball, whatever. Half ounce, quarter ounce, whatever. No, most of those guns that gets in that raid were fucking guns from this town here, right? And El Paso that were being fucking sent to the cartels in Juarez. So they're being trafficked. They were being sent over there. So that guy I think he said he had $107,000 worth of firearms, and most of them half the firearms were from gun owners here, where the town I live at. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what people don't like. We have a thing here where people, you know, they think they just leave their gun out. Well, you know, I'm leaving my gun out. No one's going to take it. You know, instead of putting it in a safe or whatever, which is a responsible thing, you know, gun owners should do. You know what I mean? Have your gun locked up in a safe.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, the guns are being run from local places. And fuck, my house can be broken into. And I got some fucking, one of my AKs go there, be using a drive-by somewhere in Juarez. You know what I mean? So it's definitely here, and it's definitely real. But lots of times I choose to, like, you can only deal with so much of it. And I think the psychological part of it, like, you even knew where you're at, where you just get sick of hearing it. Like, okay, fuck, you know, there's another raid, another thing with guns being trafficked, another thing of fentanyl, and everything like that. But lately, I guess kind of been trying to tune it out, but it's just so hard because every fucking day it's in the media around here locally. You know, this happened, that happened. You know what I mean? So it's kind of hard to tune out.
You know, like, you know, with the miracle that is Facebook and social media, you hear a lot of you know, messages. Hey, did you hear about that gunshot? Or you know, because it's happened over the last few months. People posting, did you hear that? Where did those gunshots come? And it's funny, you don't hear about it even on the local news. You know?
You don't hear about it at all.
No, you don't hear about it, and so of course, you know, you don't. A certain level which you want to know, but then
before we go any further, there's a lot of people that are leaving comments. Thanks everyone again for watching and continue this conversation with us with Mr. Jaime Aguilar. We've got Guillaume Williams said, yo, Alexandra Donaldo. I used to live in Texas. I went to school with these kids. These families were on both sides of the border. We almost got kidnapped a few times. Wow, that's crazy. Mr. Court Bolton with I think I have to answer that one. Read specifics of attacks. Drive-by and snatch attempts and school invasions. Kids being used as bait to lure in other kids. That's why I mentioned. Paranoia saved my life and friends' lives. I taught kids school how to trade and bargain using food and Pokemon cards. It says, travel packs. Lucio else is in here. Reggie Flores says we're on our own, and Americans of all colors are the least the government's worries. Amen to that. You're definitely true. Alexander Ronaldo again. Storms are often used as cover to break in the elementary schools. As Texas has a lot of storms, to this day I associate thunder with gunfire. Blaze is much less of a traumatic self-defense tool. And Tokenako, Guru Paul, how you doing? Good evening, folks. Guru Royce, guys, what's good? What's going on? Another one, Isaiah Ronaldo. They are the game show where bodybuilders were attempted recam to top condition training. Michael Carriaga, what's going on? Good evening, gentlemen. My home state is a mess. Yes, it is. California is a complete fucking utter shithole. Who did I say that? Sorry. I'm a Californian, and I fucking left for a reason, so I'm never going, knock on wood, never going back. Let me see. Another last comment. I lived in places, Alexander Ronaldo, where randomly passing, ignoring dime bags is sort of like ignoring a cigarette butt. Where do you live at, Alexander Ronaldo? Do you know her? I mean,
oh, okay. That's from
that list.
By the way, that's Tuhun Ray's daughter. She is.
Okay.
So that's Tuhun Ray Dionato's daughter from FCS Cali.
Wow.
So.
Wow. Reggie, I think you mentioned Reggie Flores. Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. He's trained with me a couple times. He lives right here in Del Rio where I live, and so he sees he's a paramedic, I believe, and so.
Wow! Should got him on too.
He sees firsthand, what's going on here, and we're pretty much of the same mindset.
She said second born, only girl. Wow. So, wow, it's we've definitely covered the whole gamut of the cartel stuff, the border stuff for sure. So, is there any chance you think maybe have you reached out to your local law enforcement to offer training to them, or they reached out to you at all?
No, I've had this was a while back. I've had a couple of officers that have come here, but what they learn is very regimented, and there's a lot of legality into it, where they really can't use a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
From within the framework of what they operate in. Now, outside of personal self-defense, yes,
and that's why I said I only train like one guy who's a cop, and he I don't train the whole the police department, and he told me I want to learn from my own personal thing, some stuff, whatever. He does not like telling the whole police department to come train, which I've already offered them, and they got the legality and stuff like that. They don't want to learn it.
Yeah, well, it's hard, if they, God forbid, get into an altercation where something like this has to be used. I mean, you're going to get a lawyer that's going to just pick them apart. Oh, we know you learned Combatives. You didn't use it on my, on this felon that just got out of prison, been in prison for 20 years. So I feel for them. I mad respect for them because they're really functioning, and a lot of times behind the eight ball. And so I think this is just my opinion. I don't know, but I think a lot of them maybe would want to learn, but they maybe can't.
Yeah. So as far as your family, I've seen you had taken your boy out there to the range and your family out to the range. So as far as your family's like personal protection, have you trained them like in certain tactics or?
My daughters, yes. My daughter. I have a 21-year-old who's in college, and I've trained them. My little boy right now, he's at the age where he's like my little shadow, and so I train with him a lot, and it's funny because you see, and this would be for any child. You see them, unfiltered, unconditioned from something that they've learned, and to see them, the way they pick up things, the way I learn honestly sometimes a lot by just watching him move, and Yeah, he's picked it up. He likes to learn. I've taken him to the range, and I think when it comes to firearms, um, there's a certain level of exposure. I think when they come of a certain age, because my son knows that he does not touch my firearms. He has no interest in them other than when I'm there, right? And no curiosity other than when I'm there with him, and he's already learned that. And so I think
that's good. That's good that you teach.
Yeah, I think part of that is responsible firearms.
Training. Yeah,
because you hear where these children get shot or they accidentally shoot themselves or something is because they're curious and they've never seen it before. And
exactly.
TV, or whatever, and so my son knows not to even go.
When I was growing up, my fucking dad never we had a shotgun and a 25 pistol, and my dad wouldn't even allow me to be near firearms, and I would ask him hey, help me teach, help me show me how you use these firearms. And he's like, no, you're not old enough, and you need to get older. So at that time, it was I really wanted to learn how to shoot, and my dad was just not fucking teaching me. He was just that big old fucking old school shit of I'm not going to show you. Kids don't have business around guns, the old school mentality shit. So I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go to my friend's house. So I went to my friend's house, and we went in the backyard, got one of his Remington fucking 12 gauges. I remember blasted off all kinds of fucking rounds. I was killing doves and shit in there. And that's where I learned my exposure to firearms was he's like, man, how come your fucking dad's whack, man? He doesn't show you use a shotgun and shit. So I'm like, dude, show me how to use this fucking gun. And he put the fucking shells in. And he's like, hold it like this. And it was kind of the backyard, country style, I'm learning how to shoot shotgun. And his dad came out and his dad was he fucking ripped his ass. He's like, man, what are we doing showing this kid his gun? And his parents get pissed off at me. And he's like, hey, don't tell your mom and dad if you're shooting back here. But then I would come home and I had a fucking bunch of shells in my pocket, and my dad's like, "Where the fuck did you get these shells at?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't know, I must have been cleaning the closet out of yours." It's I don't fucking use double out buckets. It's all kinds of shit, the birdshot shit there. So I mean, we got some people, I understand that, but we got some idiots out there too. I work with a dude. Well, I started showing my fucking son how to shoot, and he was 5. I'm like, that's okay, dude. That's a little too much now. Kid's 5 years old, he barely fucking wipe his own ass, and he learned on the show using a handgun and shit. Come on, well, that's the way my dad raised me. I'm like, well, dude, that's kind of stupid. Whatever.
I was about the same age as my son. When my dad took me out hunting and shooting, and so having been exposed then to that firearm, then when I was a lot of times alone at the house, I had no interest in, because I already saw it. I know what it is, and so I think just me, everybody's different, right? But for me, I think my son's is at that age now. I don't want him to be curious about a firearm when I'm not here. And so I see that, and he's got no interest in touching them when I'm not here.
That's good. That's good.
When I'm with him is when he asks a lot of questions. What caliber is this? And he's got a little play gun that I got for him on Amazon, and actually it's right here, as a matter of fact, little plastic one. But it's interesting because you can rack the slide, you can
teach him
how to and he's practiced that on his own, and
that's good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What about you, Kurt? Your kids?
So, I mean, I started shooting at age 5. I also started training at age 5 because, I mean, my grandfather was a World War II Marine Raider. My uncle was LAPD sheriff's deputy. My father, Air Force, dealing with the stuff that he did. And, I mean, yeah, I've been around guns and guns for the majority of my life. I've been shooting pretty much all the time. So, but as for my children, on the other hand, I have a very structured approach to them as to I have a very upfront conversations with them as to I do with everything. It's I have guns, I have firearms. You guys know that I have firearms. They don't talk about my firearms. We don't touch my firearms unless, again, it's a protocol of training of you don't touch stuff if it's not yours. You don't touch stuff unless I instruct you to. I have very strong protocol. Now, the other caveat is I do teach them if it's in the house, you're going to know what this thing does. So we're also going to know the procedures and safety and the explanation as to this is what a firearm does. Unless you are willing to do the thing that the firearm does, just don't touch it.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
there's,
you do pretty much the same as you do.
it's a very structured approach. Because
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, up here in Alaska, we got bears, we got moose, we got
Yeah,
things that want to eat you.
Yeah.
So it is a absolute reality of where we live in the environment here of as to like guns are everywhere. I mean, everybody assumes that everybody's packing here. So the necessity of knowledge about firearms is absolute. Now, caveat to that though is I don't let my kids play with guns per se, like toy guns. I really changed my tone about like Nerf guns for quite a while because there's habits and behaviors that like I don't like the idea of playing war, so to speak. I don't like the idea of playing firefight, especially with toy guns that look like real guns. I have a really hard time with that. But that's a personal thing for me. But the way I've gotten around it though is like if it's clearly a Nerf gun that's bright pink and silly looking, that's okay. But I still have to like make that mental shift and put it in the context for them as to like if it looks like a real gun, we're not using it.
Yeah. Well, you gotta get that firearm discipline too. Even if it's a toy gun, you don't point it at anybody. You treat it like it's a real weapon. It's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my point, and this is where we have clear protocol as to what we're doing. So, and it's just the same. It's the same protocol that I have with knives and swords, because just like every other Filipino martial arts, I have a collection of them, and it's the same rules of like you just don't touch them. They're not toys. So,
yeah. I smacked the shit out of my son the other day. He grabbed the Crombit and he was like, he had it, and I was like, you know that thing, you cut your finger off. I went, oh, I thought it was a toy because it's all small. I'm like, no, it's not a toy. Look at it, and I got a rack of ribs I was gonna make anyway, so I went and got to it, cut it, and he's like, oh, he was like all scared.
And that's the part of like demonstrating the reality of it. Is like, hey, this is what this thing does. Let's put it in the context of why you don't fuck with this thing.
Well, you know why kids are like that now though, because of the fucking games though, because they see like, oh man, I was gonna get blasted the sky, and it's a sword, it's a cool looking sword. I'm like, yeah, you know what that shit does in real life. Like I went online and showed my kids like, hey, you want to see what this gun does? I mean, I know I probably sound like a terrible fucking parent. People be like, man, this guy's an asshole. Like, hey, you want to see what the gun does? Look, this fucking guy's head looks like a pumpkin. Oh, it's gross. That's disgusting. I'm like, well, that's why you don't touch them. Like, that's what I'm telling you. This is gonna happen.
That's that education of like, hey, here is the consequence of the reality of the situation. I mean, one of the very important training scenarios was let's go out to the pig farm and let's go blast some carcasses and actually see what this thing does. So and you know what, like as far as like my kids, I only started teaching them how to shoot like maybe a year and a half ago, and they're like, my son's 18, my daughter's 17. I haven't showed the 13-year-old yet. But that's just my personal thing. Like, they didn't really want to learn. They're all busy with their friends. But I say, hey, my son finally asked me to go to the range. I see you go to the range all the time. I want to go. Okay, I'll show you. But I probably should have showed them earlier. But like, they already knew not to touch the guns. But like now they know how to operate them. Now my son knows 18. You're 18. Your bravado goes up. Your balls drop, and you're kind of like, oh, I'm gonna buy myself a 9mm now. I know he's going gun shopping. I'm like, okay, but it's not a toy, right? Like it's like you want to go shooting. Target shooting and stuff like that, but it's not, try to pull that gangster shit, we're putting the gun like sideways, whatever. And, he doesn't do any of that, but I mean, like they see it on TV, so they kind of.
But now bringing that back to the blade, Brian, you mentioned the certain mentality of people with firearms, right? That's a big responsibility, but so is the blade. I get a while back, somebody on the phone, hey, Bato, I heard you do knife fighting. Seriously, just judging from tone. And I go, well, I don't know what knife fighting is. I do certain and techniques with a knife.
I don't get that.
Yeah, so you can also tell the level of somebody's responsibility, or can you trust them with teaching?
As soon as I hear that, it's like, some guy worked at that. He goes, hey, I heard you do like knife, like the old school knife dueling, knife fighting, like they did like the bare knuckle boxing stuff, but it's like with knife. I'm like, what? Because you do knife fighting. It's like, Dude, you know people don't fucking fight on the street with like knives. He's like, well, yeah, I've seen it before. I'm like, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like,
yeah. This was a phone call. Hey, what? I heard you do knife fighting, man. I want to learn knife fighting. Like, and I don't know what knife fighting is. Honestly, I don't. I with a blade, but I'm not a knife fighter, and it's so cool, man. It's from what I understand, it's not cool to get and so but there's a certain level of responsibility that you also have to keep in mind, and last thing I want is you show somebody something and then they go out down the street and get into an altercation, they hurt or kill someone, not only that, but maybe nothing will come of it, but you also have to spend some money on legally defending yourself if something like that were to happen, right? And I just don't want to get involved with it.
Let me just pick your brain up. What are your thoughts of because I personally have myself have done this. What do you think about having a lawyer and retainer all the time?
Well, I think if you can afford it, it's very it's a good idea, right?
Yeah.
But I mentioned earlier about having that legal awareness, moral awareness, ethical awareness, where you don't have to get yourself involved in a lot of this stuff. What gets people into trouble, and you see it here in the weekends and bar fights and stuff, stabbings. It's bravado, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck are you looking at, man? And it escalates from there, and pretty soon somebody gets stabbed. And I personally, I don't go to bars.
Nothing good comes out of going to a bar. I mean,
being what is that saying? Being with stupid people at stupid times and stupid places. My
dad always told me that. My dad's always told me, he's like, my dad never went to bars. He likes to drink at home, but he's like, nothing fucking ever good comes out of going to a bar.
Yeah.
And my younger days, of course, I used to bar hop.
Yeah, when there was Mexico, when we'd go in the weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
College but now honestly, maybe my wife works so much that when we get home in the evenings, we just want to be home, and the weekends we got so much stuff to just do around the house that we just don't have an interest for that. At least I don't. Every once in a while, yes, have a drink somewhere, but where it's a safe time, safe place, but living that kind of lifestyle, crazy lifestyle, eventually, it's going to bite you in the ass.
I still got friends that are like late 40s, early 50s, still in the bars. They're like, man, so they go to work. I see this guy get in a fight yesterday. They broke the ball, stuck his face, or stabbed them in the back. I'm like, why in the fuck are you still going, dude? Like, have you not got the fucking hint? Like, why are you like, go with your wife or something, and go have a drink at Applebee's or some shit, or fucking Chili's or something.
Yeah.
But don't be hanging out with fucking, what they got Ojo Locos there. I don't have that where you're at. What's that big, like a sports bar here where the girls wear bikinis and shit in there. And that's a notorious place for stabbings there. I think they've had in the last year about 14 stabbings in there, 15 stabbings in there. And my friend goes there all the time and shoots pool. I'm just gonna go shoot pool. I'm like, and then the other day he was like, man, I got a knife pull on me on the bathroom. And I'm like, what did I tell you, dude, about I'm just minding my business shooting pool. I'm like, it doesn't matter. Like, those guys don't give a fuck. Like, they're gonna they're gonna pull a knife on you. You know what I mean? Like, don't go there.
Yeah.
I mean, I like you, you're my boy and shit. Like, don't be like, use your head. Like, don't keep going there to like put yourself.
People want to feel dangerous. I mean, the ego standpoint of most young men and men who are untested and unblooded, they want to feel dangerous, or they're on. Actually, it's not so much the young man who wants to prove themselves. The guys that I find more dangerous are the guys who have gone past their prime, knowing what they could do back when, and they still want to feel dangerous, and they want to go out in like a blaze of glory. They
want to take their shit,
yeah. And it's terrifying in a lot of ways, because like those are the kind of people that get you killed, and it's just there's got to be at some point like you've progressed and aged and survived to hit a certain point in your life that you're stable. It's like you've gotten there. So why would you need to go back?
Yeah, and even if you have to, in self-defense, the kind of legal problems you're going to get into just to try to defend yourself. The involving a lawyer. I mean, even if you more likely legally nothing happens to you, but man, that financial burden to hire somebody.
You got the lawsuit, you got the medical bills.
Dude, I just put this guy. Well, the lawyer I put on retainer is a friend of ours, and they do criminal defense, whatever other shit. And he told me how much it was, and I was like, you know what? Like at first, I was like, fuck, that's a lot of money. You know, like I gotta. When I start thinking about what's going on around here, and I'm like, is there gonna be a time where I'm gonna have to use? Well, you already know already. There's been 2 times already I've used it. But there's gonna be another time when I have to go even further than I went last time, and I'm gonna have to just call this motherfucker up in jail. I'll be like, hey man, I'm in fucking jail. Like you come bail me out. Like I'm, you know, whatever. But I don't know. The Mexico scene's pretty lenient. I mean, we got a guy who just fucking. We got a guy who strangled his wife and slashed her face over with a straight razor. That they let him out the same day, so he's on the streets down here. So the legal system in here is, not to say that I'm gonna do something and I think I'm gonna get away with it. But the legal system here is so screwed up in the state. Like they let people go. Like you got a guy who bashed his kid's brain in today. Like he's like a 2-month-old baby. A guy killed the baby. The judge was like, "I'm gonna go let you out on $60,000 bail," which is like what, $600, $60,000. Oh my god! And he bailed out. So I was like, "Fuck!" I'm looking at all that. I'm like, And then the thing that happened to me a while back. You guys both you guys already know already. Which I went to court with a while back for that. That haunted me still. The legal fees I had to pay for that was kind of like, not even that much, but it was like, fuck, if I went any further than what I did last time and something that really happened, loss of life, catastrophic injury, you can imagine how much lawyer fees that would be. And like, I would go bankrupt,
Oh yeah. I mean, and a lot of people do, they go bankrupt, legally defending themselves, from first something that maybe could have been avoided, or if not, something that another party just came in and did. Yeah.
And I replay the incident that happened in my mind, like what happened to me 2 months ago. I'm like, how could I have played it different and ever? But there was like, at that time, there was like no possible way because it happened so fast that we could have like, been any different. But had it been like the verbal, like talking down, which I tried, and then this guy is like, well, like his back's turned now, so let's go ahead and try to do something. You know what I mean? Like you have to react at that point. But had it been situation been different when I'm able to talk it down, like, hey, like at the end of the day, shake hands, or not shake hands, but like, hey, you go your way, I go my way. I would have done it differently. But like you're right, I'm thinking about like, because the shit's getting so crazy around here. It's like, the more training I do, it's like, and I go out now, every time I go to the fucking store, there's always somebody with an attitude in there or somebody in the parking lot. It's like, I try to avoid it best I can, but sometimes you just can't avoid it. It's just right there in your face, and you gotta deal with it.
And let me ask you this, because I know this is how it worked for me. When you start to learn bladed arts, combative arts, you start to see things that you didn't see before. How they say, like, if you want to learn how to defend from a blade, you learn to use it. Well, so you start seeing that, and for you, Brian, like for example, Piper, right? You studied Piper. Did you think that learning of that blade, learning of that criminal element side, do you think that helped you with your awareness, with your pre-assault leading, awareness?
That really helped me out a lot. And then also my training with from Julian from Adrenaline Combatives is because, him working the doors, picking his brain when we do our training. Before we start our training, we do like a 45 minutes of classroom and experience. He calls it experience work.
Julian,
Adrenaline Combatives, Julian Masson, yeah.
Oh yeah. I've seen his stuff.
Yeah, I've been training him for about a year now. I've been training under him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, he has some great shit. The Piper and not only that, I don't know if I ever told you. I think I talked about a dude that was in prison. When I asked him about the prison systems and stuff, I talked to that guy on the phone. We tried to get him on for an interview, but he's not interested in airing out his stuff when he's in prison. So it was a private video call we did, and just his take on because he's robbed people and gotten fights in the street. That's why he's in prison, and he's taking people out in prison. And he's just telling me like, you need to watch out for this, watch out for that. He's a friend of the family, my parents' family, he knows them. They know him. So he's like a friend of the family kind of. And just his experience dealing with the violence, all three of those things, and putting it all together. Like, I know what to look for now when I go, obviously we all always know, someone has their hands in their pockets, probably weapon involved. Mm-hmm. And now just like, scanning the room when I walk in, like, especially for you where you live at. I mean, I'm sure when you go to the supermarket now, you're probably like, looking around.
And you do see, a lot of deviations from baseline, that kind of stuff that mm-hmm. could turn on the light bulb back here, for awareness. But you learn different things from different people. When I started to learn, the Piper under Lloyd, you start to see, especially because of, like, we mentioned earlier that the Piper is a knife system that the criminals use, right, in South Africa. But you start to see how you can hide the blade, how there's certain body language that you can read, certain deception type, and so you start that before. I didn't know that, but also, one thing I learned from studying with Lloyd and Piper is more movement, not techniques, right? And so I got to see that side, and I employ that with what I teach.
The body movement and closing the distance in Piper is fucking second to none. Phenomenal. I mean, you're not going to get anything better than that. Like, as far as closing distance, the fall, getting in without, that inconspicuous, getting in that close proximity. Like,
and but the what I was trying to say is the awareness, right?
Yeah.
Of how they hide the blade, how you can hide something in plain sight. And so those aspects really help, especially with what's happening here in the border, and I'm sure in El Paso. There's certain things you look out for, right? That before I didn't know, but Piper works when you're here, right? When you're on someone, it's really hard to defend from an assault like that,
And what I've noticed is what you just said right now. The close proximity, the walking up, like, hey man, like getting in your space where you just like, hey, I had to do that last week. Some guy was like, what I noticed they do around here is they prowl to the cars. So, like, you're in the parking lot, like a Target or something. I call it, kind of like what like the lions do in the grass, like in Africa, where they go like that to the high grass, like the top of their head. Well, over there you see like the top of their head, like when they're going to the cars, and like this guy, I'd seen him like 3 or 4 cars over, and he was like on me like within like 2 or 3 seconds. Like, I don't know where he came from. I saw him and I lost track of him. And I was opening my trunk and I saw him in the corner of my eye. I turned around and he was like, hey man, I'm trying to get home out of gas, blah, blah, blah. That story. I was like, I got nothing for you, man. Got nothing for you. And he's like, oh, come on, man, you got nothing? I got nothing for you. I was looking in my car or whatever. But I was, I could see his hands. He had a sign in his hand. But he had something else behind his hand too. He had a pen. And he was like, moving around with his fingers like this, like twirling it, and he had it like that. He's like, yeah, cool. So you don't have anything? I'm like, dude, I don't have anything, man. I know he was gonna do though. Give him the chance, he probably put that fucking pen in my neck. Like,
wow. A pen in the neck is just as effective as a blade in the neck.
Yeah, so but he was,
but you start to see certain movements. That the other day I was putting gas and I was at I know we jump, but it's good because something ties into something. I was at a gas station the other day and I had to go inside, and what we're seeing here is I don't know everybody in town, but you can tell who's from here and who's not generally, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're starting to see a lot of these tattooed, webs. I don't know what a lot of that stuff is, but then there's certain things where there's tattoos and then there's tattoos, and so I was in there paying and when you start to see a lot of this stuff, start to blade right towards you, like, oh, those are big signs, right? And so this guy started he was on the other side of the store and started coming at me, and so you start seeing a lot of that stuff, right? And so you start to prepare, and he got to my side, so I kind of bladed him, started getting ready for in case, when they start making these weird movements, that's
Lots of high too when they do that.
Yeah, because they're not that they're hiding their movement, but you start.
No, like they're high on drugs.
Yeah.
So they go like that.
What is it called? I'm losing the name of it. Is it confirmation bias, where you start to try to convince yourself that nothing's wrong?
Yeah.
And so you fall victim because you don't see, or you don't want to pay attention to a lot of the obvious indicators that are there, right? And so they sometimes start doing these movements, right? Because then after a second or two, well, that's just the way they move. And then, pow, and they get you from an angle. Well, Piper taught me a lot of that stuff, right? And so then you develop a certain body language where you might get me right, but it's not going to be easy for you. And so I think it's like they sense that, right? So but if I hadn't studied that, if we hadn't studied, that comes from and we wouldn't know. I think a lot of the time is visually you can set yourself up to be a victim, right? But if you display a certain demeanor, certain body language, where you outwardly manifest, where I'm not going to be a victim, and yeah, you might get me right, but it's not going to be easy for you, because a criminal doesn't want to fight. He just he or she wants to just get what he wants to get and move on. And they can analyze you instantly, whether you're predator or prey, right? And I'd rather develop those stuff where hopefully where somebody looks at me, they know that I'm not a prey for them.
And just what you're saying about the tattoos, I've seen a lot of that too. A lot of the MS-13, a lot of the Venezuelan gangs, prison gangs, they tattoo their face too. A lot of them do that around here. So I've been seeing a lot around here too.
What's funny, Brian, is I hear that they're actually now, like a lot of their members in Venezuela or wherever, El Salvador, where they're actually now telling them not to get tattooed, because that's a lot of dead giveaway when they get border patrol. And so you're starting to see now some come in here that are MS-13, but they just don't manifest it in the tattoo or the neck or something. So that's what's scary,
And I know we're talking about the people coming in. It's not just Latinos or Hispanics are coming in. You got Africans there. I think you guys have people from Haiti coming in there, right? Haiti, Nigeria, Haiti, Chinese.
Some of these African countries have emptied their prisons. Venezuela literally emptied their prisons and allowed those people to join these caravans coming in.
Yeah.
And so it boggles the mind why people don't see that as a threat. I mean, we got it's like, I have my water jug here. If I fill this with, I don't know what it can carry, maybe 1,000 jelly beans, right? And if I said, there's 1,000 jelly beans in there, but 12 of them are poisonous, would you take it? No. If I offered you a jelly bean, would you take one?
Oh, of course not.
No, but if I tell you, Brian, the chances of you getting a bad one are very small. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
You must be racist towards the red ones. You must be racist towards. I see this, Yes, of course. Most of the people coming in aren't dangerous, but damn, man, there's some that are, and those that are will kill you for $5 that you have in your pocket. I just wish that. And I get very heated sometimes when I talk about this, and I apologize.
Well,
I wish people would see that. I mean, what is it going to take? What is it going to take to see to what's happening here on the border?
Until it comes to their homes, it's what it's going to take. Because a lot of people are speaking from privilege, cognitive dissonance, bias, and just straight arrogance and ignorance. Because like my little town of Homer of 5,000, okay, people are now starting to see the stuff that's coming up from the border, even here in our little town of 5,000. Because people, I mean, they expect by distance and by time and whatnot that it's not going to come to their home. But the fact is, it does. There is a trickle down effect. But until they are in your home, in your face, and having to live that way, people, even up to the point of them robbing you, will still try to have like this emotional need to like say, hey, the enemy's not here. When the fact is, I'm not saying like people coming across the border is the enemy. I'm talking about criminals.
Yeah.
Like actual like predators. When people don't understand the whole prey predator dynamic and understand like predators know predators, sharks know sharks, and like unless people actually have lived that lifestyle and actually they just don't understand it, don't see it because they come from a point of privilege. And the thing that we find with is like the majority of America has been relatively safe for quite a long time because of like a protective group of people who do the job. And like the so I don't know.
What are you seeing over there in Alaska? Is there anything like I know there's I don't know if they go up that far or not, but have you seen anything over there like as far as like migrants like that coming over there? Or?
Yeah, so Homer technically is a sanctuary town. That's an interesting one. So there's that. Fentanyl is up here. Opioid is up here. So like a lot of the work that I was doing with the Alaska National Guard is I got access to a lot of our interagency work and tracking people and groups and organizations and like seeing the data itself about like tracking people coming up from the border, criminality coming up from the border. Human trafficking is a big deal here in Alaska. And so it's here and it's not just at the border. So those are the kind of things. As for violent crimes, I mean, crime follows where the money is at. And so we have canneries, we have places where people will do migrant work up here as well. So the fact is, they're here as they are all over the country. Now, it's not exactly as immediate as it is like they're on the border, but there is a trickle down effect of you give enough time, it'll grow into the community. And it has here in Alaska. I mean, it's even here in Homer to an extent.
And I want to say too, I don't want to sound like like conspiracy theorist and like that, right? But I actually we have donated clothes to the local Catholic church here for the families, like the legitimate women. And when that shit happened in El Paso, like there was clothes we donated to the church because they were holed up there. You know what I mean? It was cold at the time it happened, so we get some jackets. So I don't want to sound like some kind of heartless prick. I didn't do anything, you know what I mean? But we donated some clothes and stuff, but those were to like the women and children, like not to the fucking guys, which are like 90% of the people that are coming through are men.
Military age men.
Yeah. The fucking most of the dudes. I asked my friend, like I said, he busts these guys all the time, every fucking day. That's what he does. And he's like, I asked him what he sees. He says they see a lot of Chinese, a lot of Chinese. He says, and a lot of Russian.
Yeah.
I was like, and people are like, well, it's just the Mexicans are coming through. It's just the fucking are like, dude. There's everybody.
The besides the elements of with what's going on at the border, I mean, doesn't anybody think what kind of a major national security concern we're dealing with here?
Oh yeah.
You mentioned fentanyl. Fentanyl is the number one killer of our youth. It's coming from China. Are you familiar with a gentleman named Michael Yan?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Ex Green Beret Special Forces. Now he's a journalist. Have you seen the shit that he's seeing up in the Darien Gap?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, and whether you're from one political party or another, just seeing these things for what they are, not for what you want to believe. I mean, that should raise a huge national security concern. But the stuff he's seeing down there, and it's coming. It's coming here. We have a hotel here. I'm not going to mention the name, but we have a hotel where you'll see anywhere from 5 to 12 buses just waiting for their orders to go pick up a load and take them to whoever, right? And it's getting to the point here where most of the agents are called in to do processing work, where you literally have huge swaths of land that are undefended. And The media doesn't cover it. You know, you don't want to talk about it because you're going to be labeled a certain racist or whatever.
Yeah.
To the point where I don't give a shit. This is what I'm seeing. You know, and you know, this is raw and unfiltered. And I'm sorry for my language but this because I'm seeing it firsthand. Brian, you're seeing it firsthand.
Exactly.
You know, Kurt, you've seen it. Where this is an outrage. What's happening here, and I don't think I'm being overly dramatic. You talk to anyone that lives on the border, and they'll tell you, and if you're lucky enough to know someone that actually works and they're willing to openly talk about what they do, I mean it's an outrage. It's huge national security concern. It has huge ramifications. You know, you said that we're you know there's Russians now coming in, there's Chinese, and ironically, you know, with what's happening in the Ukraine, you know, really should we be letting Russians come in through our southern border illegally? I mean,
the Chinese are. I know where I work. I work next to White Sands Missile Range, so I work at Holloman, and we've had security stuff. I can't go into it with Chinese stuff. White Sands had some stuff where they had some Chinese nationals try to get on the base that came from Juarez. Through the desert with a coyote and try to get on the White Sands Missile Range.
And you know, it's crazy. But you know, I look at a lot of these pictures of the people that they round up, right? But you see some of these people that they round up, you can just tell by in the videos or pictures or whatever. You look at their body language, their demeanor, and you're like, man, this guy's got, or these group here probably have some sort of military training. These guys
military age fighting man
coming in for you know for a better life. But I mean, you're getting all kinds of stuff. You're seeing all kinds of stuff. You know, it's just crazy. It's outrageous, and there's not a goddamn thing that our government's doing about it. And nope. you see. Well, I shouldn't say. I mean an administration right now that doesn't see. I'm to the point where really, like, I'm sure they see it, but they have an agenda. But if you talk to someone that is on the front line, you see a lot of people that are just demoralized. You see a lot of frustration. You see. I mean, it's having a cascading effect on everything, you know, and God help us with, you know, whatever is coming down the pipeline, you know, because I think there's going to come a breaking point. I think the more people are seeing what is actually happening versus what they're being told on programming, right? Hey, programming for a reason, right? But anyway, that's another topic. But when people are seeing firsthand or hearing firsthand what's happening, I think it's opening up a lot of eyes to what their previous inclinations or ideas were. So we'll see what happens, right?
Sometimes I feel, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but like somebody who does the work, who spends their professional and personal life training, preparing, and educating themselves about the enemy, okay? Sometimes you can feel like you're alone and you're the guy just screaming in the dark, and everybody's just saying, hey, no, it's just quit being a party pooper. The world is just not that way. It's just like, well, the fact is, the world in a lot of ways is. I mean, this is the reason why, like, the 1% of the people who actually stands to the darkness, so to speak, I mean, that's your military, your law enforcement, people who actually do the job at the behest of the many to protect the many, but they're often also just like not responded to properly or give them the credit due of like when they actually say, hey, this is actually what's going on because I face it every day. Mm-hmm. And then you got the turn off and the bias of everybody else that they're trying to protect. It's like, well, you give me the job and the authority and the responsibility to protect you, but when I'm trying to tell you what I'm protecting you against, and then you say that I'm wrong, and that's not actually the case. I mean, there can be quite a bit of like frustration coming about from that, because I've heard that a lot from agencies that I've worked with and officers I've worked with. It's like they see the best and the worst of humanity, and that lack of appreciation of like, hey, let them do their job. And like part of that job is saying, hey, here's the truth and here's the reality of it, not what's being put out on the news, but like people on the ground saying this is what's the truth out there. And I can imagine that is incredibly frustrating So I know it is. My own part. So.
Yeah, it's incredibly frustrating, but it's also very concerning. You know, I mean, you know, because like I said, we this stuff was here before, but not to the levels we're seeing it now. And you know, I suppose you still have some people that don't believe it. You know, and those people you're never going to convince that there's a massive crisis happening at the border, right? But it's those people that are stuck in the middle that hopefully will open up their eyes and see things for what they are.
It affects everybody. Even he Kurt's all the way in fucking Alaska. You know, I mean, top of the world. We're down here. You know what I mean? So it's these people that live in these little fucking shelter communities or Midwest. Well, I live in this. I never see that over there. Of course you fucking don't. You don't. You don't open up your eyes. It's around you. Trust me.
Or they just don't know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's the point of privilege of, like, if you haven't been exposed to this stuff, you don't know what you're looking for. But also, if you haven't been exposed to this stuff, you've been actually relatively safe and you've actually had a good life and you're very fortunate. But those of us who actually see this stuff, do this stuff, and deal with it, it's like you also got to, like, trust that what we know, what we're talking about is the actual truth here. We wouldn't lie to you. That's the thing. We're saying these things because we love you. So.
You know, I think it might be changing. I don't have cables. I don't watch a lot of what's happening on TV. A lot of it's BS, honestly, if you ask me. But I think like the news doesn't cover it, and you know, and if they do, I think it's very minimal, and they cover it from a slant like, well, we have to let them in. You know, I tell you, you know, a story. My brother was at a little convenience store, and they have, you know, sometimes they have like a little food court and you can sit down. He was in there, and this group, this is what he was telling me, this group came up to him and he was eating, right? He kind of looked up like, yes, can I help you? Like, yeah, you have to feed us. And my brother is a Vietnam veteran. He was an airborne ranger, so he doesn't get intimidated very easily, you know, and kind of was like, what the fuck, you know, I have to do shit for you, you know, and but you're starting to see even more that attitude, that brazenness, that I'm here, you know. And
yeah, I told you, I see it downtown fucking El Paso. You go to underground parking. Unfortunately, there's a lot of good stuff in downtown El Paso. It's getting ruined by the whole shit situations going on over there. But you can't even go to your fucking car, you know. Oh, I'm hungry. I'm going mad. You know, I got like, you know. Then you got like the guy looking at you like that, you know, moving his hands around. You're like, okay, this fucking dude's probably gonna rob me or something. It just ruins the atmosphere because there are some legitimate nice businesses downtown. It used to be 2-3 years ago. You could take a walk down there at night, you know, go to different shops, go eat. You know, one of our favorite restaurants, Mexican restaurants, is downtown El Paso. We go down there all the time and eat. And it's been ruined. You can't even do anything down there anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you got. I'm always carrying. I always like, you know, like I don't want to pull anything on anybody. You know what I mean? You know, pizza fucking kid. The kids are pickpocketing and shit over there. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, and when they come in with and not just, you know, with these illegal immigrants, it's with anything. When you don't fear repercussions, then you don't give a shit.
Well, they got nothing to lose, yeah.
Yeah, and so you're seeing that here, where you know they'll get a stipend, they'll get a free ticket to where, you know. Meanwhile, we have homeless veterans in our streets. We have people just living paycheck to paycheck because of, you know, inflation is such that they can barely afford the necessities they need to for their families. And so when you see firsthand, you know, what's happening here at the border, it's an outrage. And forgive me for, you know, sometimes losing my temper about this, but man, you know, I just don't see a solution, or not even a want for a solution, you know.
No.
So it's very frustrating, you know, and so that ties into what we do, right, Brian? I mean, we teach people how to deal with some of these criminal elements coming in, and as best we can, and just put the next foot forward and move on, you know.
We can do, yeah. Yeah, well, we're coming up about 2 hours, man, but this has been we're gonna bring Kurt back again. He's hiding. He went incognito areas.
Come back. Sorry, guys.
Uh, so yeah, that's how this has been great. This has been that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. You know, open, candid conversation, frank conversation. And you don't have to apologize for anything. Bad language or anything. That's why we brought you on.
When I was coming in, on your show, the words really resonated with me. They're raw and unfiltered. I get, because I know I'm going to get hot talking about some of these topics, but I want to thank you guys, because this is in a sense a forum to bring forth information which a lot of people don't know about what's happening here in the border, and I think we just, at least from my perspective, we touched on a small point, but there's so much out there that we can talk about regarding the border, right? But like I said, all I can say is God help us with what's coming, because if you see the things that are happening here, the things that are coming down the pipeline, I don't think it's going to be pretty. And so then that drives more, to what we teach, right?
Yeah.
So
if anybody's watching this and they're kind of like, well, these guys are just random because they live do your research. Type in El Paso, Texas, mainly. That big shit's going on. Type in Del Rio and do your own research. These are our opinions. I mean, these are what we see too. Our experiences, what we see. But, do your own research. Go look online. Go look, go just ask people. It's all there for you to see. But thank you very much. Appreciate it, sir. And
thank you.
One last bit for you, Jamie. Question for you: What brings you hope in this whole situation that we're dealing with? What brings you hope for a path moving forward, even small or large? What brings you hope in all this?
I think I have some hope in that people are opening up their eyes to what is happening, and so. I have friends that are Democrat, but do see what's happening here and are seeing things not from one side or the other, right? But just for things as they are, and they are starting to. It's what's happening here. It has resonated with them, and they're seeing things that we haven't seen before, and so they have a different mindset. Where hopefully, I think with that comes that I think you start to elect leadership at the local level first. I think leadership at the federal level is broken. I honestly, just my opinion, neither one side or the other, is effective to deal with the things that we're dealing with. So it starts at the local level, and I think that you're seeing a lot of eyes opened, right? And where people are doing more at the local level.
I wish those eyes would open in El Paso, but
you know what, you know what, Brian and Kurt, I don't want to give the impression that I am cold-hearted about this. I do have a lot of compassion, because I see people that come through here, and I see the need, the fear, the desperation, and God knows what they've seen, right? But I also see that this issue has become weaponized for an agenda. And looking at it from that perspective, God help us. If they have to use the poor and most vulnerable of people for their agenda, I don't think it's. I know it's not a good agenda. And I think more people are opening up their eyes to that. And so I want to thank you guys. For having me on. I was telling Kurt in the before we came on live, that I've seen the quality of people you have on the show, and you guys with the level of training you have, and I don't know why you asked me on here, right? But
okay, take it back.
I appreciate it, but I appreciate you having me on, and
no problem.
Whatever I can contribute, to what's.
Grateful to have you on and have your perspective, and actually, there's a lot of hope in telling your story, telling your truths, because you wouldn't do this if you didn't care. That's the real point of it. You wouldn't train and you wouldn't teach, and you want to try to share this information if you didn't care. So it's a a big boon and a big statement on your character, and I appreciate
Before
you.
before he goes, if anybody wants to get a hold of you for training, I know we probably should touch a little bit more on the CENTCOM. But if anyone wants to get a hold of you training, how do they reach you?
My CentCom page has the information there, my number or private message, and we can do from there. I don't do too much online stuff, but I have done it before, and so they can start there.
Awesome. And also too, do you have any seminars coming up or anything you want to advertise?
Yeah, I do. Me and a friend have been discussing doing something for educators, and with bladed work, the movement patterns such that then transfers on to having scissors in your hand, having you mentioned earlier about a pen. It transfers. Oh, the skill transfers over to other things, and then I think something like that would be really good for educators. And so we'll see what happens with that.
Awesome.
I'm open, to teaching, but I only teach, and this is the thing too, is I only teach private instruction, and there's a reasoning why I do that, and so that's not for everyone, I mean, you all have studied some of the aspects, especially the predatory type of bladed work. I mean, let me ask you guys a question. Do you think that is for everyone?
No.
Yeah. Exactly.
I haven't even showed anybody any kind of Piper stuff or even Medusa stuff. Nothing.
Yeah, and so that's why I only do private instruction.
Yeah. Just general FMA, like knife stuff. I've shown to like my students. There's been a couple that want to know like more, and I have kind of taught them privately some stuff, but they showed level-headedness and general interest. And they've been with me for a while, so yeah, not everybody should know that. You're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
I mean, yeah, and like I said, and I'm sure you guys. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm pretty confident that y'all share the same thing. You do this more out of a passion, right? And at least that's what I do. And so when I do teach, I don't hold back. I teach everything that I know. If someone goes on and achieves something higher and better, more power to them. And so this is a big passion, that I do this for, and I'm not doing this for the money, and so whoever is interested, we can start with open communication through my CentCom page.
Awesome. Well, you heard it, guys. You're watching it. You watch this later on. Get a hold of Mr. Jaime Aguilar, CentCom-Combatives, and thank you for taking your time at your Saturday.
My pleasure. It was a great honor for me to be here.
Get to some grilling, because I know I'm gonna do some grilling after this. So
yeah, I've seen your grilling, Brian. I wish we lived closer and exchanged.
Oh man, dude! When I go down there, like I definitely have to come. I've been planning for a while, and I'm a procrastinator, but I definitely have to go there and train with you, and we have to do some barbecue for sure.
Whenever you want, brother.
We'll put Kurt on Skype so we can see it.
Well, awesome. Well, Jamie, I'm going to drop you down, do our outro, and yeah, I appreciate you. Just hang out in the lobby there.
Big honor for me. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Coming up.
Yeah, so next Saturday we have Court Bolton, PTK, Pumugat, talking about. He's actually got a really interesting question, particular to why, as instructors, we sometimes refuse to look at certain things for our instructions. So it would be interesting to hear his take on that. So it's happening next Saturday. So
awesome. We have a couple people for October. We haven't made flyers yet, guys. We're still trying to coordinate times. But yeah, the ship still keeps on sailing. We're still rolling. We're gonna keep doing it until we decide one day we don't want to do it anymore. So keep on going. We're gonna keep on going. What about your other show? You're gonna want to shout out to that one? Any episodes?
I don't have anything coming up immediately, but when I do, I'll put it out there. I have a couple of people on the list, but it's just coordinating. So
And I know a couple people message me like, why we haven't like the interviews are so far spread out and why there are not that many of them.
Because I have a life.
Yeah, I was about to say you just took it out of my mouth right now. Yeah, we do have other things we do, so this is kind of like just whenever we get time, and whenever our guests have time, we post shows. There's no set amount of shows we're gonna have a month, so you've probably seen that already. So I hope that answers the question. The people that I don't know if anybody's watching that's answering that question, but if you are watching, the person that asked that question, now you got your question answered. And why there's not that many shows. So it's all about quality, not quantity on this show.
Yep.
So we do quality guests, quality topics. So we're not all about views and likes and generating all kinds of popularity. At least I'm not anyway. But anyway, all right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us, and everybody that commented, thank you. And one last comment before I go. I don't want to ignore Alexandra. She's been commenting a lot. Thank you for your hard work. She said, thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. And we can't always control what kids need to do, but safe, we can only pray. Thank you for your comments, Alexander. I appreciate it. Thank you for everybody that watched. And we'll see you next Saturday. See y'all later. Good night,
everybody.